In 2007, Nokia controlled the mobile phone industry with a level of dominance few companies in history had ever achieved. Its devices were everywhere, in airports, offices, schools, factories, and homes. If someone owned a mobile phone, there was a good chance it was made by Nokia. The company sold hundreds of millions of devices every year. Its market share towered over competitors. Its profits were enormous. And inside the technology world, many believed Nokia had already won the future. Then a man walked onto a stage in California and pulled a piece of glass from his pocket. The device had no physical keyboard. It had no removable battery. It was expensive. It lacked features that many existing phones already had. To some industry veterans, it looked incomplete, even foolish. Yet within a few years, that single product would help trigger one of the most dramatic collapses in business history. The question is not why Nokia failed to see the smartphone revolution. The uncomfortable truth is that Nokia saw it coming. Engineers inside the company had been experimenting with touchscreen devices years before the iPhone appeared. Executives understood that software was becoming increasingly important. They knew mobile phones were evolving into portable computers. They had the talent, the money, the patents, the manufacturing power, and the global reach to lead the next era. In many ways, Nokia was better positioned than anyone, and that is what makes the story so fascinating. Because this is not the story of a company that was blindsided by innovation. It is the story of a company that stood at the center of an industry it had helped create, watched the future approach, and still failed to adapt before it was too late. As competitors moved faster, Nokia became trapped inside its own success. The systems that had once made it unstoppable gradually became obstacles. Decisions slowed. Internal divisions grew. Software fell behind. New threats emerged from directions few executives expected. While Nokia continued refining the business model that had made it the king of mobile phones, the entire definition of a phone was beginning to change. The shift happened with astonishing speed. One moment Nokia appeared untouchable. The next, its dominance was evaporating. Market share collapsed, consumer loyalty weakened, developers abandoned its platforms, rivals surged ahead, and one of the most valuable technology companies in the world found itself fighting for survival. Just a few years after reaching the peak of the industry, Nokia was forced into a decision that would have seemed impossible during its golden age. The company that had once connected billions of people would lose control of the very business it had spent decades building. How does a company go from ruling an industry to losing it almost overnight? That question lies at the center of Nokia's rise, its mistakes, and one of the most remarkable corporate downfalls of the modern era. To understand how Nokia lost the phone war, it is necessary to remember what the mobile industry looked like before smartphones transformed everything. Today, people think of a phone as a small computer, connected to an ecosystem of apps, services, and cloud platforms. But for most of the 1990s and the early years of the new century, the industry operated according to a completely different set of rules. The goal was simple: build reliable hardware, manufacture it efficiently, distribute it globally, and convince consumers to upgrade every few years. Success depended on engineering, supply chains, carrier relationships, and brand recognition. Software mattered, but it was rarely the main attraction. Most phones performed the same basic tasks. They made calls, sent text messages, and offered a handful of additional features. The competition centered on battery life, durability, size, and price. This environment created an enormous opportunity for a company capable of producing high-quality devices at a massive scale. Nokia turned out to be exceptionally good at exactly that. Unlike many of its competitors, Nokia understood that mobile communication would eventually become a necessity rather than a luxury. While others treated mobile phones as specialized products for business users or wealthy consumers, Nokia focused on making them accessible to everyone. The company invested heavily in design, manufacturing, and global distribution. It developed devices for different income levels, different regions, and different customer needs. Whether someone wanted a basic phone for calls or a more advanced device for messaging and productivity, Nokia likely had a product ready. As mobile networks expanded across Europe, Asia, and eventually much of the developing world, demand exploded. Millions of people were buying their first mobile phone. Then, millions more followed. Nokia was perfectly positioned to capture that wave. Its devices earned a reputation for reliability that bordered on legendary. Consumers trusted the brand. Carriers wanted to sell its products. Retailers wanted them on their shelves. The familiar ringtone became recognizable across continents. For many people, Nokia was not simply a phone manufacturer. It was the phone manufacturer. The company's growth reinforced itself. Strong sales generated larger profits. Larger profits funded more research, more production capacity, and more global expansion. As competitors struggled to keep pace, Nokia became increasingly dominant. By the early 2000s, the company was not just participating in the mobile revolution. It was helping define it. This dominance extended beyond hardware. Nokia also understood that phones would eventually need more advanced software. Long before modern app stores existed, the company was experimenting with devices that could browse the internet, manage email, and run sophisticated applications. Through its Symbian operating system, Nokia gained control of one of the most widely used smartphone platforms in the world. On paper, this seemed like the ideal position. The company led in hardware. It possessed a major software platform. It had deep relationships with mobile carriers. It had global brand recognition. It had enormous financial resources. Most importantly, it had experience operating at a scale few technology companies could match. By almost every traditional measure, Nokia had built the perfect empire. Yet, hidden inside that success was a growing vulnerability. The industry that Nokia had mastered was built around phones as physical products. Every process inside the company reflected that reality. Product cycles, management structures, engineering priorities, and business strategies were optimized for a world where hardware determined success. But technology was moving in a different direction. Computing power was increasing. Mobile internet connections were improving. Consumers were beginning to expect more from the devices in their pockets. The center of value was slowly shifting away from hardware and towards software. At first, the change appeared gradual, almost invisible. For a company as powerful as Nokia, there seemed to be plenty of time to adapt. That assumption would become one of the most expensive mistakes in the history of the technology industry. For years, Nokia appeared to be doing everything right. As mobile adoption accelerated across the world, the company transformed from a successful manufacturer into a force that shaped the direction of the entire industry. Its products reached markets that competitors struggled to serve. In wealthy countries, Nokia devices became symbols of convenience and modern communication. In developing regions, they often represented a person's first connection to the mobile world. The company's reach extended across continents, languages, and income levels. Few technology brands achieved that kind of universal presence. Part of Nokia's strength came from its ability to understand scale better than almost anyone else. While rivals focused on individual markets or specific customer groups, Nokia built a machine capable of serving nearly everyone. It offered dozens of models at different price points, each designed for a particular audience. A student buying an affordable device, a business executive carrying a premium model, and a first-time mobile user in a rural community could all end up choosing Nokia. That strategy created a powerful advantage. Every additional customer strengthened the company's position. Manufacturing costs dropped as production volumes increased. Distribution networks expanded. Carrier partnerships deepened. Brand recognition grew stronger. The more phones Nokia sold, the harder it became for competitors to catch up. Its products also earned a reputation that marketing campaigns alone could never create. People trusted Nokia because the devices worked. Stories about phones surviving drops, harsh weather, and years of daily use became part of the brand's identity. Consumers expected Nokia devices to be dependable. Battery life often exceeded what competitors could offer. The hardware felt durable, the user experience was familiar. When customers upgraded, many simply purchased another Nokia because they saw no reason to switch. Loyalty became one of the company's most valuable assets. Meanwhile, competitors struggled to establish the same level of consistency. Some companies produced innovative devices but lacked global reach. Others had strong distribution networks but failed to differentiate their products. The mobile market remained fragmented, while Nokia's position became increasingly secure. As the industry evolved, Nokia continued expanding its ambitions. The company recognized that phones were becoming more than communication tools. Cameras improved. Internet access became more practical. Mobile email gained popularity. Businesses started relying on portable devices for productivity. Consumers expected more functionality from every new generation of hardware. Nokia moved aggressively to capture these trends. Its higher-end devices introduced features that seemed remarkably advanced for their time. Some models offered internet browsing, multimedia capabilities, navigation tools, and downloadable applications years before smartphones became mainstream. To many observers, Nokia appeared to be building the future, one product at a time. This progress reinforced a belief that had become widespread inside and outside the company. Nokia was not merely leading the industry, it was the industry. At its peak, the company's market share reached levels that are difficult to imagine in today's technology landscape. In many countries, Nokia phones occupied entire sections of retail stores. The brand dominated sales rankings year after year. Analysts viewed the company as one of the safest and most successful businesses in technology. The numbers told the same story. Hundreds of millions of devices were sold annually, revenues surged, profits climbed. Investors rewarded the company's performance. Executives became increasingly confident in the strategy that had delivered such extraordinary results. And there were good reasons for that confidence. Nokia had spent years overcoming challenges that would have overwhelmed many competitors. It had navigated technological transitions, expanded into new markets, and maintained leadership while the industry experienced explosive growth. Every major test seemed to confirm the same conclusion. Nokia knew how to win. The company even appeared prepared for the next stage of mobile computing. Its engineers were among the most experienced in the world. Research teams explored new interfaces, advanced connectivity, and software platforms. Nokia possessed thousands of patents and invested heavily in innovation. From the outside, it looked like the perfect combination of scale, expertise, and resources. Yet success was beginning to create a dangerous illusion. The larger Nokia became, the more difficult it was to question the assumptions that had built its empire. Processes that once accelerated growth became increasingly complex. Product portfolios expanded into dozens of overlapping devices. Internal decision-making involved more layers of management. Teams focused on protecting existing strengths rather than challenging them. None of these issues seemed urgent at the time. Sales remained strong, market share remained dominant, customers remained loyal. The empire looked invincible. But beneath the surface, the foundations of the mobile industry were shifting. The next phase of competition would not be determined by who built the best phone. It would be determined by who redefined what a phone actually was. And when that moment arrived, the advantages that had carried Nokia to the top would suddenly become far less valuable than anyone inside the company expected. The warning signs did not arrive as a crisis. They arrived as small signals that were easy to dismiss. For years, Nokia had competed in a world where hardware determined winners and losers. The company knew how to build phones better than almost anyone. It knew how to manage suppliers, negotiate with carriers, manufacture at enormous scale, and release products for every corner of the market. Those capabilities had created one of the most successful technology businesses on Earth. The problem was that the rules were beginning to change. At first, the shift seemed subtle. Mobile internet connections improved. Consumers spent more time interacting with software. Applications became increasingly important. Expectations evolved. People no longer wanted a device that simply performed tasks. They wanted a device that could continuously gain new capabilities. Nokia recognized these trends. That is what makes the story so complex. Inside the company, there were talented engineers who understood that software would play a larger role in the future. Teams were already experimenting with advanced concepts. Some employees openly discussed touchscreen devices and richer mobile experiences years before they became industry standards. The challenge was not a lack of intelligence or foresight. The challenge was execution. As Nokia grew into a global empire, its organizational structure became increasingly difficult to manage. Multiple divisions worked on overlapping products. Different groups competed for resources. Product roadmaps stretched across numerous device categories. Decision-making slowed as more stakeholders became involved. What once looked like strength was gradually becoming complexity. Then came the moment that changed everything. When Apple introduced the iPhone, many people inside the mobile industry were skeptical. From a traditional phone manufacturer's perspective, the device appeared to have significant weaknesses. It was expensive. It lacked features that many competitors already offered. It depended heavily on a touchscreen interface that seemed unproven at scale. Viewed through the lens of the existing market, skepticism was understandable. The mobile industry had spent years optimizing devices around physical keyboards, buttons, battery efficiency, and carrier requirements. Apple appeared to be ignoring many of those conventions. Nokia executives were not blind to the product. They studied it carefully. They understood that it was innovative. But many believed its limitations would prevent it from becoming a mass-market threat. That assessment seemed reasonable at the time. What Nokia underestimated was not the hardware. It was the new model behind the hardware. Apple was treating the phone as a software platform first and a device second. The touchscreen was important, but the larger shift was the idea that software could become the primary driver of user experience. Updates, applications, services, and ecosystem integration would matter more than individual hardware specifications. That distinction would reshape the industry. As Apple gained momentum, another threat emerged from a different direction. Google introduced Android. Unlike Apple, Google was not building a single premium product. It was creating a software platform that could be adopted by numerous manufacturers. Companies around the world suddenly gained access to a modern smartphone operating system without having to build one from scratch. The impact was enormous. Manufacturers that had once struggled to compete with Nokia could now focus on hardware while relying on Android for software. The smartphone market began expanding at extraordinary speed. Meanwhile, Nokia found itself trapped between two very different competitors. Apple controlled the premium experience. Android spread across the broader market. Nokia still possessed immense resources, but its software strategy was becoming increasingly difficult to defend. Symbian had been designed for an earlier era. As touchscreen devices became more important, adapting the platform proved challenging. Development grew slower. Complexity increased. Competitors appeared more agile. Developers increasingly focused their attention elsewhere. This created another problem. Modern platforms thrive on ecosystems. Developers create applications. Applications attract users. Users attract more developers. The cycle reinforces itself. Apple and Android were rapidly building that cycle. Nokia was struggling to keep pace. Yet from inside the company, many decisions still appeared rational. Abandoning Symbian immediately would have meant walking away from years of investment. Millions of customers used Nokia devices. Carrier relationships depended on existing product plans. Shareholders expected continued performance. Executives faced the difficult task of protecting a highly profitable business while simultaneously reinventing it. History often makes transformation look obvious. In real time, it rarely feels that way. Every major decision carried risk. Move too slowly and competitors gain ground. Move too quickly and the existing business could collapse. Nokia attempted to navigate between those extremes. Instead, it found itself losing momentum on both fronts. The company launched new initiatives, explored alternative platforms, and searched for a path back to leadership. But each passing year strengthened rivals that were moving faster. Consumer expectations evolved more rapidly than Nokia's internal systems could adapt. Products took longer to develop. Software improvements arrived more slowly. Market share that had once seemed permanent began to erode. The most dangerous part was that the decline was initially difficult to recognize. Nokia was still enormous. It still sold millions of devices. It still possessed one of the world's most recognizable brands. But the center of gravity had shifted. The company that once defined the future of mobile technology was increasingly reacting to it instead. And by the time that reality became impossible to ignore, the smartphone revolution was no longer approaching. It had already arrived. Once the smartphone era reached full speed, the consequences became impossible to contain. For decades, Nokia had measured success through scale. More devices sold, more markets entered, more customers reached. That strategy had built one of the most dominant companies in technology history. But as the industry shifted towards software ecosystems, application platforms, and integrated digital services, scale alone was no longer enough. The market that Nokia had once controlled was disappearing beneath its feet. Consumers increasingly chose devices based on operating systems rather than hardware brands. Developers concentrated their efforts on platforms with the largest software ecosystems. Applications became major selling points. Cloud services, app stores, and seamless user experiences started defining competitive advantage. Apple and Android were benefiting from this transformation with remarkable speed. Every new application strengthened their platforms. Every new user attracted more developers. Every improvement made switching away from those ecosystems less attractive. The momentum became self-reinforcing. Meanwhile, Nokia found itself fighting a battle on multiple fronts. Its market share continued to decline, profits came under pressure, investors grew concerned. The company launched new products and pursued new strategies, but each attempt faced the same challenge. Competitors were no longer playing the same game. The smartphone market had become a software war. In an effort to regain relevance, Nokia made one of the most consequential decisions in its history. Rather than continue competing with its existing platform, the company formed a partnership with Microsoft and adopted Windows Phone as its primary smartphone operating system. At the time, the move appeared logical. Microsoft possessed enormous resources, deep software expertise, and global brand recognition. Together, the two companies hoped to create a credible alternative to Apple and Android. The partnership promised differentiation in a market that was rapidly consolidating around a small number of dominant platforms. But timing mattered. By the time the alliance fully took shape, Apple and Android had already established powerful ecosystems. Developers, consumers, and businesses were increasingly committed to those platforms. Convincing the market to support a third ecosystem proved far more difficult than expected. The strategy failed to reverse Nokia's decline. Year after year, the gap widened. The company that had once sold more phones than any competitor in the world was losing relevance in the industry's most important category. Its influence diminished, its bargaining power weakened, its leadership position vanished. Then came the moment that symbolized the end of an era. Nokia agreed to sell its mobile phone business to Microsoft. For many observers, the announcement felt almost unimaginable. The company that had defined mobile phones for an entire generation no longer controlled its own phone division. An empire that had once appeared unshakable had surrendered the market it helped create. The collapse did not happen because Nokia lacked talented people. It did not happen because the company ignored technology. It did not happen because executives failed to recognize innovation. In many ways, the opposite was true. Nokia had brilliant engineers. It invested heavily in research. It anticipated many of the technologies that would eventually shape modern smartphones. Its downfall came from something far more difficult to overcome: The company succeeded so completely in one era that adapting to the next became extraordinarily difficult. The systems that created dominance became obstacles to transformation. The strengths that built the empire became less valuable as the market evolved. While competitors were designing for the future, Nokia was still managing the responsibilities of being the present. And in technology, timing can be more important than size. Today, Nokia still exists. The company continues operating in telecommunications and network infrastructure.
But its role in the technology landscape is very different from the one it occupied during its years of dominance. The age of Nokia as the king of mobile phones is over. Its story remains one of the most important lessons in modern business. Power does not guarantee survival. Market leadership does not guarantee the future. Even the strongest companies can lose their advantage when the rules of competition change. Innovation matters, execution matters, but timing may matter most of all. Because in technology, empires rarely fall in a single moment. They fall when a new future arrives faster than they can adapt to it. And sometimes, the companies best positioned to lead that future are the very ones that lose it. If you enjoyed this story of innovation, competition, and the rise and fall of a technology giant, subscribe to Inside Tech Empires for more untold stories from the companies that shaped the modern world.